So probably many of you have already figured out that I'm the coordinator of the program. And that means hopefully that, that I can answer some questions that you have. I also teach into the program. And then Stacy is here. She's a student. She's currently in second year. And so she's going to be making a few statements and then also willing to answer sort of any questions that you might have from the student perspective. So I guess I'm going to start with this slide. I really like this slide. These are photos that I've taken over the years, and I did some cropping to focus on hands. And I think that's why people are really interested in our program. We're a hands-on program. And Ryan has mentioned a little bit about how our programs have been delivered. And I'm sure many of you are aware that lots of programs this year across the province went fully online. We did not do that. We delivered in a hybrid model, and that's because we're really, really concerned that the hands-on practical skills that people need both to enhance their learning and also to enter employment are maintained. So how we did that is we took our theoretical material and we took that online, and then we still continue to meet in the labs and also the field to do our sort of our hands-on work. And I think for the most part, I mean, we had some bugs, but I think for the most part, that worked out relatively well. Stacy, do you have any comments on sort of hybrid delivery?
It was definitely a different challenge from first semester when we were fully in the classroom, but I thought it worked fairly well. We managed to still get to use the equipment and learn how things worked and put things together and apply all the concepts we were learning.
Yeah, so I think people who tend to come to this program, we'll get people who are interested in being outside, you know, field people. We'll get people who are interested in being lab people. We're really trying to blend both of those things for several reasons. There's skills which complement each other. And also, of course, because of the fact that you are not ever going to be in the field 100% of the time. You're always going to have to be bringing your data and your information into an office or into a lab and then ultimately doing something with it. So I think that's sort of the stage or the background that people have when they're sort of interested in our program. So maybe we'll start off by talking about field work, because that's definitely something that people often come to us saying they're really interested in. And I tried to pick a couple of images here that highlight a few things. First of all, notice there's snow in some of those pictures. We are outside all year round. That means you're going to have appropriate field clothes. So you're going to have to be able to be dressed for the winter, for rain, for sun, whatever the case might be. We spend a lot of time talking about safety in the field, and that's definitely something that's important both for individual participants, also for the person that's working beside you, and also because that's a transferable skill. So as you move into the workplace, working safely with others and accomplishing the tasks that you have within that parameter and within that framework is really important. So again, if you take a look at people, you'll see that we have water work. That's certainly something that interests people. So issues around water quality, we do that by monitoring in situ, which means on site. We also do that by sampling benthic invertebrates. So those are organisms that live on the bottom of stream and can give us some indication of water quality. That is a separate course. We also do hydrology. So that's talking about how water moves around, how it flows, how it impacts the landscape, how the landscape impacts it. So there's certainly a strong water component in our program. When you get to the fourth term of our program, we have a course on water and wastewater treatment. So it's focused primarily on drinking water and making sure that students who are interested in doing so have the ability to move into that as an industry. So working in a drinking water plant or a wastewater plant in the province of Ontario requires a series of steps and exams, because of course those are areas that have a lot of regulation associated with them. And so you can complete your level 1 for drinking water operator in the fourth term. And there's always people who come to this program because they're really interested in that in a career. And of course, there's also some people who had really not thought about that as being a career before. That gives them a chance to think a little bit about how that application could be a relative, or I guess an option as you're moving forward. And then of course we have people who are interested in more in sort of wildlife, vegetation, planning, mapping, policy, conservation. That's another stream that people are often interested in. We have soils courses focused on soils, sampling courses, some courses on identification of plants, and those are all sort of put together by that sort of image in the top right-hand corner where you see people madly writing things down. Documentation is incredibly important. So what are you noticing about the place that you took that sample? Where did you take that sample? How could you find it on a map? Could you map it? Have you documented where that sample was, including labeling it properly, which would allow you to actually start the whole process of analyzing it and then determining what that data meant. So for sure, there's definitely people who come to the program thinking this is their chance to be outside, and you are outside, but you're not outside all the time. Stacey, is there something important I forgot to add there?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I feel like you covered a lot.
Boots, own boots, I think.
Yes. And good high rubber boots, not just the little ankle rubber boots.
And then the flip side of that has to do with sort of being inside in a laboratory or a computer lab where maybe you're working on some mapping of where your data was gathered, or maybe you're taking that sample which you've brought in from the field and you're running it through a series of tests. So you're looking at sort of a mix of things. We've got 2 science labs on campus, and you can see some shots from them there. We are essentially working on chemistry. So there's a really important component and stream for chemistry in our program. Our program is a little bit unusual in that it actually has a requirement for chemistry in order to enter it. So many college programs only have math and English as a requirement. Chemistry is incredibly important, and we want to make sure that the people who come here have a good foundation in order to succeed. And so it's important that you understand how chemistry and chemical reactions interact all the way through environmental science at every single level, no matter whether you're looking at air or water or soil. And we have 3 chemistry courses. So there's one in the first term, one in the second term, and one in the third term. And then that sort of image that you can see on the far right, that's a student operating an AA, which is analytical equipment, which is used to sort of determine what's in samples at a little bit of a higher level. And then of course we are also doing the lab, working in the lab for spaces which are not specifically chemical related. So we're identifying benthic organisms, that's the image on the far left-hand side. We are preparing soil for analysis. That includes a lot of very boring things like grinding and weighing and drying before it even gets to the point that you can determine what's in it. And then we also do an annual field trip every year, and that's the image on the lower left. So they're actually smiling, which is great because I think that was the day we had a lot of rain. So what we're doing here is we're taking our second years out to a cumulative field trip. So we go to a site, everyone comes, and they rotate through a series of activities that are linked to 3 or 4 classes, including chemistry. So we're actually doing analysis outside. And what we're trying to get people to do is to recognize how things are connected and how things are interrelated. One of the challenges I think that people think sometimes when they look at our program is they look at our course list and you've got 6 or 7 courses every term. It sounds like a lot, and it is. You're carrying a much heavier course load than you might be at university, and it's a lot of balls to juggle, and time management's really important. But what we really want to continue to emphasize for people is that these courses are all interconnected and related, and things that you learn in one course can get transferred to another course, and that you're really starting to think about how things are applicable. So we're really trying to focus on taking you from the theory that you might have been thinking about or learning in high school, memorizing your periodic table or the Krebs cycle or something like that, really getting away from that and trying to get people to see how things are related and how they apply to real world situations. And actually, Stacey, maybe you want to make a couple comments about the lab. Stacey actually works as a lab tech as well.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at your pictures. There have been a few changes since you took these, aside from just us wearing masks every day.
Oh,
but
yeah.
The lab space is great. We've got the machine that Andrea mentioned. We have an ion chromatography machine these days, which I got to learn how to use as in my role as staff. And some of my classmates are now learning it a little bit more as students. Yeah, there's just almost anything you need is in the lab. So,
so maybe we'll leave this and go to the next one. And I think this is just sort of a little bit of background information. Just think about how we deliver things. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with sort of how colleges operate right now. So we do have classrooms and we do have labs. When you get a timetable, you will have some things which are in a classroom and some things which are in a lab. So essentially for most courses, they're divided. Most of our courses are 3 hours in length. Sometimes that's delivered as a block, and sometimes it's delivered as like a 2 hour in the lab and a 1 hour in the lecture, depending on the particular course. We use an online web platform called Blackboard, and that's essentially a way of us getting information to you. So we make announcements there, we post your grades there. We also post notes for courses and for labs. In many cases, it's where you submit your assignments. So you have to be looking at Blackboard relatively regularly so that you understand what is happening. Sometimes in our program, our courses or our activities get shifted or changed because we do have weather limitations sometimes, also location limitations sometimes. We do leave campus and go to other places to do things. That requires some moving around and some coordination. Every single course is going to have something called a teaching and learning plan, and that's essentially a weekly schedule. It lets you know what you're doing that week. Maybe if you're going to be outside, so you know to bring your boots. It tells you when things are due, if you've got assigned readings, sort of allowing you to show up and manage your time and then be prepared, because I think that's hard. I think time management is something that everyone struggles with a little bit. You are going to be told probably to set aside a certain amount of money for textbooks. This course actually, we have very few textbooks in this program. That is for a couple of reasons. One, textbooks have got increasingly expensive. You almost always have to buy them bound, with other resources that we're not necessarily using. And our courses are pretty specific. So we don't really want people buying textbooks that they're not going to be using a great deal, because that is just frustrating. However, I would say to you that we do have reference materials and other sorts of equipment that you would need. So maybe set aside the resources that you would generally have spent on textbooks, and make sure that you've got good field clothes, and make sure that you have money set aside for carpooling if you have to buy your driver a coffee or something like that. And then also, of course, computers are increasingly essential. We have posted on our website standards for computers. That was necessary this year because we were doing some things online. And we do have a mapping course called Geomatics, which requires a certain amount of, sophistication or level of computer in order for that software to run effectively. So it's not necessarily that you're always bringing your laptop to class, but you certainly are going to want to have those resources available to you. And then again, I'm emphasizing that field clothes and a computer are pretty essential. For those of you who are not from Niagara, Niagara has a lot of clay, and that means the sites can be slippery when they're wet. It also means that your boots can be clogged with mud. And so you really want to make sure that you've got field clothes that allow you to move sort of safely and effectively around outside. And then, I don't know, I tried to do 7 steps to success. I don't know, I think the 7 is the magic number. So first of all, we do tend to have relatively small classes. So we usually have an intake of about 40. You're divided into 2 sections. So that means you would be in the lab with 20 or 22 people or so. So relatively small classes. We will know if you're there. We'll know if you're not there. We'll know your name. Your peers will know if you're there or you're not there. You want to make sure that you're giving the impression that you are showing up and that you're interested in becoming engaged and that you're reliable. So presumably you came to a college because you want to do stuff. That means you need to actually be there to do stuff. You need to make sure that you're getting that experience and you're trying stuff out. And you know what? You're going to fail the first time you do it, and that's absolutely okay. because you're going to do it again and you're going to get better and better and better as you move along sort of through time. Time management tends to be tricky for people. We do have services on campus. We have an academic advisor, we have counselors to try to help people get on track and to stay on track. And again, information is posted on Blackboard for you, so make sure you're checking all your courses and seeing sort of how things are coming along. Don't be shy about asking questions. So again, that's probably why you came to be in a program that has some smaller classes. Look for patterns and connections in your courses because they're integrated, and that will help to make things maybe a little bit less disjointed. This course is co-op based, so it's a diploma program. So that means you do your first year, and then in the first summer after your first year, you apply for co-op positions. That's a bit of a competitive environment. So essentially, there's a website, you click on your website, everything that is listed there as a co-op position is there. You're encouraged to apply for as many as you can. Get some interview experience if you haven't had that before. And then the employers will post interviews just like they do for jobs. And then they can offer you that position. For us, you need 350 hours of co-op within sort of our area of expertise. And we really want people to start getting experience, even if it's not your dream job. Sometimes people have a really strong ideas of what it is they want to do. But you have to realize that sometimes there's steps that you have to take to get there. And again, I just think if you want to do something that you enjoy and that you like, and so you really want to spend some time thinking about where you might be going and what you might be doing, because ultimately, probably if you're not enjoying yourself, you're not going to be happy in whatever program it is that you pick.
Oh, here we go. We've got a question from Lizzie. For the co-op, how does it work if you don't live in the Niagara region?
So it's not unusual. You mean if you're a student and you're not living in the Niagara region, yeah, it's not unusual for that to happen. So what would happen there is there's a list of co-ops which are posted. Many of them are in Niagara, of course, because people are often interested in working locally if they're from here, but they're spread across the area. And then we also sometimes have people who have pretty strong ideas of where it is that they would like to work. And then what they do is they give suggestions essentially to the co-op office about where it is they would like to be. And then from there, they sort of give ideas, and then the co-op office can do some follow-up from that.
Right, and correct me if I'm wrong, Andrea, but the co-op for the environmental technician program, is it like its own co-op term, right? A dedicated.
That's true. Yeah. Sorry if I wasn't clear on that. It is. So it's in the summertime. So essentially, I think right now there's something like 60 some jobs posted. Some of those are specific to us. So that means the employer has a specific relationship with us and they're only posting to our students. Mm-hmm. And of course, you're right. Many of those are local because that's where our relationships are a little bit stronger. But those jobs can be also all across the province and open to many people besides us. So it's perfectly okay to not be from here. I mean, we have had international students that have returned home and completed their co-op in, the Canary Islands or wherever they were from. So it's not that the job has to be here. It's just that the job has to meet the criteria of being an environmental job. So that's 350 hours plus, related essentially to our area. But that's pretty broad, right? That can be things in terms of, it can be community outreach and sustainability. It can be in water, it can be in soil, it can be wildlife, it can be lots of things.
Yeah,
I'm not
excellent.
sure. Did that help with the question? Lizzie, did that answer your question?
Yeah, feel free to let us know in the chat, Lizzie. Great question. And then I do believe there's another question here from John asking about what the job opportunities are after completing the program.
So I'm thinking you're asking where do our graduates ultimately end up going? So I would say there's probably three major streams. So one of those would be consulting. So environmental consultants are people who have jobs doing project management. They are looking strongly related to development and municipality things. And they're the people, so my students would be the people gathering the data for that. So a development is coming in and someone has to go there ahead of time and gather the baseline data. That could be related to wildlife, something like migratory birds. It can be related to plants, water, any of those sorts of things. So that's one pretty big stream. Another pretty big stream would be industry. So people don't often think about industry with respect to waste, but actually many industries create streams of waste that are not just solid garbage. They could be wastewater. And so if you're a large factory or a facility, you're going to have processes inside your organization that require you to treat your waste, and someone's going to have to be doing that. And then your next sort of major area would probably be municipalities, particularly if you're talking about drinking water or wastewater. So every single municipality is dealing with all of the waste that are particularly coming from their area. And that could be solid waste, that could be outreach with the community, that could be things in public works, sewers and all those things, how they operate. Plus there's laws that are provincial or federal that they need to be following up, and somebody needs to be taking the samples and doing the paperwork and following through for those sorts of things. So those are probably the main areas. And then sometimes NGOs. So an NGO, an environmental NGO, is an organization that has a particular interest in something. Sometimes it's fish, sometimes it's, Ontario streams. And they have usually smaller teams, but not always, that are sort of working to bring their vision and their mandate forward.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrea. Perfect. We have another question here from Jonathan, who is really interested in fish and wildlife. How much time do we focus on this? And what careers can I pursue with this diploma that focus more on fish and wildlife?
So if you're interested primarily in fish and wildlife, that's a small component of our program. So generally the most sort of standard or famous place to do that is a Fleming College, because they do fish and wildlife technician. The thing you have to be a little bit careful about is you have to think though, what sort of a country do we live in? We have winter. So that means fish, field work, and work specifically with fish is going to be restricted seasonally. So your question then becomes, what are you going to do for the rest of the year when you're not actually able to catch fish? So even if you're interested in something like working with fish, you're going to have to think a little bit about what skills would you have to pair with that so that you can have a job all year round. And maybe that's things like policy or grant writing proposals. Maybe that's things like water quality. Maybe you need to pair it with some sort of a watershed mapping thing. So you might have to be a little bit broader based so that you can make sure that you have employment opportunities all year round and not just on a summer crew.
That's a good point. Thank you, Andrea. And we have another question from John asking if the September intake is going to be hybrid. Now, I know that at the beginning of the presentation, I had mentioned that we are hoping or optimistic for a significant uptick in on-campus learning for many of our programs. Now, a lot of that's going to be updated come May. So if you check out that, and I'll post the link actually in the chat once I'm done here, to the COVID-19 section of our website. That will update sometime in May to kind of allow you and show information on what we're expecting to delivery to be in multiple different programs for the fall. But Andrea, did you have anything to add?
No, I mean, we delivered it in a hybrid mode this year. And that was because we fought really hard not to be online, because it's extremely important for our program that people have hands-on experience. So we were among the few programs that were consistently on campus because we wanted to maintain those skills. I don't know what they're going to do in the fall, but we're hopefully going to be fully on campus. And I guess at the worst case scenario, we would be hybrid again. But as Ryan has mentioned, like every other organization within the province, we're sort of bound by the requirements that public health gives us. And my understanding is that as soon as that information is clear or confirmed, then that will be released by the college.
Yep, absolutely. Again, Andrew, we are bound by that, and we do understand, of course, the urgency for you wanting to know, of course, how am I going to be learning in the fall? That's a completely understandable question. And so as soon as that information is available in May, we will be getting that out to all of our students. So thank you for those questions. Are there any more questions as we move on? We still have a bit of time in the session. So feel free to post your questions in the Q&A. We'll keep an eye on it.
Or, Stacy, would you be willing to just maybe make some comments on what it's like to be a student from a different
Sure. Yep. So I'm an adult student. I came back to college after 10 years in the workforce. It's been a great experience. You get a schedule that you can work around. I know people who have part-time jobs outside of school. I have a part-time job on campus. So you've got a little bit of time to play with. Andrea mentioned a while back the TLPs, the teaching and learning plans. Those are wonderful. I keep my upcoming stuff on a due date list right behind me just so that I can cross stuff off, keep track of things. When due dates change, I usually update the dates. I have a couple on there that I've left because I want to try to get them done early. It's a pretty heavy final few weeks of school here of my last term, but yeah, it's just time management has definitely been probably the biggest thing for me that I've had to work on, especially with the hybrid, because with first semester when we had in-class time for our lectures and in-class time for all of our labs, it was a lot easier to schedule things. Once we went hybrid and I had to start scheduling them myself, I did struggle a little bit at first, just working that all in and reminding myself that I had to do it because it was a lot easier to fall behind when I wasn't in the classroom watching the lectures.
Yeah, if I can actually jump in, Stacy, that's a really good point. And as a sort of a recruitment coordinator, I spend a lot of my time talking to future college and university students. And one of the things I really try and get across is that when you do become a student in college and university, you're going to be considered an adult. And you're going to be responsible for a lot more things, right? The hand-holding is sort of gone. And now, as much as our professors are there to help you and guide you, and if you ask a question, they'll answer it. But that's the thing, you have to ask the question, right? And we'll have kind of that responsibility. And that's not meant to be scary. It's meant to be proactive. It's meant to let you know that that's sort of what you can expect from entering post-secondary in general. But Stacy, if you don't mind me asking, what are some of the things that you did in the program that really stood out to you?
I've been straight from the beginning a big fan of the field work. I worked in an office for a decade, and it's not that I hated it, but by the end of it, I was definitely ready for a change. And I'm just going outside and putting the pieces together for the different ways nature connects with itself and how we can help clean that up and make things either work better or work the way they were intended to work. And people have gone in and messed up.
Yeah.
I've just really enjoyed putting all those puzzle pieces together.
That's awesome. Do you spend a lot of time sort of doing that, I guess, in like our own backyard in the biosphere behind the college, or?
For our field trips?
Yeah, or field work, or?
Field work, we've done some on campus. We've done some local conservation areas. Thursday this week, it wasn't so much field work, but we did a walkabout of the old GM site here in downtown St. Catharines to talk about some of the things going on there and what needs to be done and what could be encountered during the next phases at that site. So yeah, it's just putting all those things together in our own backyard, in areas that we live and see and interact with.
That's the important part about the program, I guess, right? That's all the stuff everyone seems to overlook. and you guys really don't. So that's awesome. No, thank you. So, oh, Sydney, did you get to see the Screaming Tunnel?
I have seen the Screaming Tunnel by myself. I haven't gone with school, but I've been by myself. I've also been to the Blue Ghost Tunnel, if you haven't been to that one yet. They're both walkable from campus. So
The Screaming Tunnel. Yeah, I totally forgot that the Screaming Tunnel was there. I hadn't been there since high school, I don't think. It's a very cool location.
yeah, I mean, nothing scary happened while I was there, but
Good question though, Sydney. Thank you. Any other questions sort of related to the program or the Screaming Tunnel or the Niagara College? Anything else you guys would like to know? We have a question from Leah. Or Leia, I'm sorry if I pronounced it wrong. Not sure if this was asked, but are there any plans in place if COVID gets worse? Will we still get our field and lab work? So again, Leah, unfortunately, we don't have a concrete answer for you right now. We hope to have certainly more concrete plans in place come May, when the sort of the government starts to make its decisions regarding how we're allowed to move forward. I know that, and I'm sure Andrea can speak to this, the big thing about especially a program like this and college in general is that sort of hands-on work. So being able to tackle this situation and maybe finding ways to just increase the level of health and safety that we're offering on campus to be able to get you into the field and doing that lab work is definitely going to be a priority and a problem that we're certainly going to try very, very hard to solve in the case of COVID-19, of course, getting worse than it is now. Leia also has a question. How many people are typically in the environmental technician program? Andrea?
I can answer that one. So our intake is usually about 40 people. And then when you go into a lab, that would be divided into 2 sections. So you'd have 20, 22 people in a section when you're in the lab. If you're in a combined lecture, then you would be sitting in a room with 40 or so people. And that means that you're going to know each other quite well. We're all going to know who you are. And that for many people, right, they like that because it gives them a chance to really have good relationships with the people around them. But you're not going to be anonymous, right? You're not going to be able to hide in the corners because we are going to for sure know who you are. And that, of course, the reason we need to be those sizes is because we need to get you into the lab, make sure that you're able to work safely with all the equipment, and then make sure that there's a chance for every single person to step up to the plate and try stuff. So try it. You might fail the first time, but you're going to learn by doing, right? And that's something that is extremely important in this program and probably also in life. So yes, about 40-ish people, give or take.
Perfect. And just a reminder to everyone too, I believe we still have 10 or 8 of the attendees in the session. This session will have been recorded. So if you may, naturally, if you forgot anything that was spoken about here today, you can definitely come back to the Open House website and check out the recording, just to give yourself a bit of a refresher before you either start the program or apply to it or what have you. So actually, Andrea, on that point, what is the availability for the program in the coming year? Right now, is it open?
So there's still spaces. I mean, our application rates have been fairly high, sort of as the college goes. But of course, there's always changes, right? People are still making decisions. Many people have all of the questions that people here have been asking, when do we know to what extent it's going to be fully, in person or partially hybrid? People are trying to determine what their lives are going to be like. But certainly there's still space. And if it gets full, then what they'll do is they'll create a waiting list. And then what that means is that as spaces become available, as other people decide to do something else, then they'll let you know. I think, there's only so many people who, first of all, have the chemistry requirement that we need for our program and are interested in doing, something this broad-based with, such a strong mix of applications. So, I think if you're interested, apply. If you change your mind or you want to do something else, then, you've got chances to switch it around. The college will stay in communication with you. And that date that Ryan gave at the beginning of the slide, there's a series of different times that offers go out. So if you have missed the first offer round, which went out in February, that's okay. I mean, there's others, right? And if you change your mind, that's also okay. It's really, really important that you spend some time thinking about what it is you would like to do and where you're going to be happy and what you think is a good match for you. Because this is a couple of years of your life and, a bunch of money and actually a whole lot of emotional energy, which is probably even more important than those other two things. And you want to really make sure you've got a good match because we're in small classes. And if there's somebody who doesn't want to be there, it's not very pleasant for everyone around them as well. So please take some time. If you have questions that you think of later, you can direct them to Ryan. And if he's unable to answer them, then he can direct them to me and I can either set up a separate session with you or perhaps we could email back and forth. But all of the time that you're spending thinking about what you're going to do, it's really important that you get an idea. There's so many things out there and it can be very difficult to narrow it down. And you want to make sure that you're sort of making a choice that you're going to be able to be happy with.
So Andrea, actually speaking to the idea of having to make a choice and there's kind of lots of decisions out there. Leah also has a question on the sort of, I suppose, competitive advantage that Niagara College might have. So she's asking what kind of facilities does NC offer that other colleges may not? And so, for example, she mentioned that Pembroke, which I believe is Fleming, has a mobile lab.
Yeah, so every place does something a little bit different, partially related to their geography. So we have an advantage in that we're not right inside of a city, we're at the edge of a city. And that means we can step outside of the door and demonstrate quite a few things. We're right on the edge of the Niagara escarpment. There's trails, there's a stream going through our campus. We can get to places very quickly and easily because of our geography. That also, however, can be a problem if you're thinking about access to public transportation, because I would not say that's something that we do as well as other colleges, particularly those that are in the Toronto area. There are at least 10 colleges in the province that offer an environmental technician program, and all of them have a slightly different twist, right? So Fleming has a history of doing field work for the Ministry of Natural Resources, and you're going to still see that kind of woven through their programs a little bit. So a place like Mohawk has a much stronger engineering component. So you're going to see, pipes and valves and tanks kind of woven through their program a little bit more tightly. So you have to really think, you have to look at those things and think about what it is that is of interest to you. For the most part, you're going to see a lot of similarities between courses, and that's because the ministry, the provincial ministry, has sort of requirements for what has to be in every course that's calling itself an environmental technician course. So you're going to see some similarities among some of the courses as well. That is, I guess, good because it means we're all working from a common foundation. And it also means if you show up someplace and you're unhappy, you can probably transfer to another place if you wish. But absolutely think about what it is that you like, what your skills are, what you're interested in. We run a pretty tight ship. Our courses are well constructed and they're pretty well integrated. I think that's what we do really well. They're also fairly broad. So some people really like that because it gives you a good grounding in many things. And some people it actually makes nervous because they feel there's so much they're not quite sure and they would like a tighter focus. So we are very much not much like a dental hygienist, where if you are a dental hygienist, every single person understands exactly what it is you do and what every single day of your life is going to look like. We have the opportunity to have a little bit of flexibility, and some people like that, and some people that makes them uncomfortable because they prefer more structure. So again, you have to sort of think about what sort of person you are, and then figure out if there's a pathway to what it is that you like to do, sort of within this umbrella of courses and programs.
Awesome. Excellent answer, Andrea. Thank you. Leah, I hope that answered your question. Let us know in the chat. No?
I'm not, it's okay, try that again. So she was asking about Pembroke?
Well, she had mentioned that Pembroke offers in their program like a mobile lab. So is there any type of equipment or opportunities or things that that we have that makes our program offered at NC more attractive to potential
Oh.
students?
Yeah, you know what? I wouldn't say Niagara is better than any other college. I would say every college has strengths and weaknesses, and you have to find the match that works for you. So some people really like the fact that we're in a fairly small town area or quasi-rural. It's easy to get around, and some people hate that because they want to be in an urban environment and they don't want to feel that they're sort of isolated down in Niagara. Some people like the fact that you're in a really small class and we're all going to know your name. And some people would prefer to be more anonymous in a larger program in the city. Some people are very interested in engineering and think we should do more engineering. Some people are very interested. Someone was asking about fish and wildlife. Well, the classic program in the province of Ontario for fish and wildlife for the past 50 years has been Fleming College. So if that's something that you feel you're really interested in, then that's of course where you should go. So I don't think any college is better or worse. They do different things and they have different strengths and different angles and different locations and different tones and different cultures. And you need to find the one that's going to match what you're interested in. And that's going to be a personal choice to some degree for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, Leah, it definitely is. It's a very tough question to answer because, you know, colleges themselves don't look at each other in the sense of how we're better than other colleges, right? I would recommend, I did post earlier in the chat a video to a sort of environmental lab tour that you could see to kind of check out some of the equipment you would be using. And maybe that's a good way to compare it to some things that you might be doing in other programs as well. Just as some of your own due diligence, but also go through and look at the different courses that are offered in each of the programs, right? What are the courses offered in our environmental tech program as compared to Fleming's or Durham's or Mohawk's, right? To really be able to narrow down and say, okay, well, these are courses that would interest me. So that's what I want to go with, right? It is very much a personal preference.
So just to build on that a little bit, one of my big things that I liked about Niagara was the campus, that it has the outdoor lagoon spaces where they've been doing the restoration. So you get to see in action some of what we've been learning and see some of the opportunities beyond our program. That there's the ecosystem restoration program and the environmental management and assessment program that you can move on and build into once you've completed either the environmental technician or something at another post-secondary institution.
Yeah, Stacey, there's definitely room for growth too. Going like, it's not just environmental tech and you're done, right? You can take it on to another post grad cert or maybe a degree, right? In some cases too. And I know Andrea also mentioned if you were looking at things that might be beneficial for the program, Stacey, you mentioned the lagoon, which of course sits on our campus geographically. Niagara College, the Niagara Lake campus where the program is located is I think a huge benefit to students. The campus itself, the campus grounds are actually about 120 acres large, which of course I mentioned earlier. It backs onto, I can't remember the name of the trail, Stacey or Andrea, if you can.
The Bruce Trail?
The Bruce Trail, right? It backs onto the Bruce Trail, then Niagara Biosphere. It does have the lagoon on site. Like there's lots of different opportunities to explore that and sort of environmental strengths that come along with having that much land as part of your campus. Perfect. So we've got a few more minutes until we close up. Are there any last minute questions? Before we kind of do close up, I want to give a sincere thanks to Andrea, Stacey, and Matt for being here and taking their time this Saturday morning to be here and to share their knowledge and their expertise with the students. So again, this is going to be recorded and available to any of you and to your friends and everything afterwards on the Open House webpage. So please don't hesitate to visit that and check it out. But 2 minutes left now. Are there any last minute questions before we close up and call it a day for environmental tech?
Thanks everyone for stopping in and for showing some interest, and good luck on your journey as you sort of decide what you're going to be doing next year. I know it's really hard to pick, and it's certainly hard to pick in this virtual thing, but it was nice to meet you all.
Awesome. And thank you, the attendees, for being here. Of course, your time is appreciated, and we know that there's a big decision, of course, ahead of you, and we're excited for you, and we're happy that to kind of help with the research that goes into that. And also, if you are going to visit the Screaming Tunnel, keep an eye out. You won't see it, but there are wood beams that are much lower than you might think, and I've hit my head off those quite a bit. So
That's the Blue Ghost Tunnel.
oh, the Blue Ghost Tunnel. Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, careful there. So just watch out for that. But yeah, that's it for us. And again, thank you so much for your time, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.